Student, good morning to all. Now we will discuss about biozoology subjects. In zoology subject, 11th biozoology, unit number 4, chapter number 9, locomotion and movement. Locomotion and movement. The subtopic is structure of typical bone and the types of joints. Before, we already explained the locomotion and movement and the number of bones in our body, axial skeleton and appendicular skeleton, everything. But in this class, we will discuss about structure of typical bone. So bone is important part of our body which gives shape to our body and strength to our body. It helps to move from one place to other places. Here, the bone generally made up of 3 regions or 3 parts. One is diaphysis, another one is epiphysis, third one is membranes. Membranes around the bone. Membranes around the bone. The first part is diaphysis. The diaphysis is the tubular structure which forms long axis of the bone. So listen here, the structure is diaphysis. This is the major part of the bone. It forms long axis of the bone. It is a tubular structure. The diaphysis otherwise called shaft. The next part is epiphysis. The epiphysis are nothing but bone ends. The end of the bone is called the epiphysis. So the end of the bone, it forms 2 ends. One is upper end, that is the top of the bone, is proximal epiphysis. Proximal Proximal means it is the first part, initial part is proximal epiphysis. So the epiphysis are end part of the bone. 2 ends of the bone is called epiphysis. This upper part is proximal epiphysis. The lower part is distal epiphysis. Distal means what? Just away from the proximal. That is the lower end. Here, proximal epiphysis and the distal epiphysis, a place between the diaphysis and the epiphysis. Listen here. The place or region between the epiphysis and the diaphysis. Epiphysis, this part is epiphysis. This region is called long axis of the bone, or major part of the bone is diaphysis. The region between the epiphysis and the diaphysis, this is known as metaphysis. Or physis. Similarly, the place or region between the diaphysis and the epiphysis is called metaphysis. So, listen, epiphysis are 2 ends of the bone. Diaphysis are the middle of the bone, long part at the middle of the bone. The place between the region between the epiphysis and the diaphysis meet is called metaphysis. This is called upper metaphysis. Another one is called lower metaphysis. This is proximal metabasis, another one is distal metabasis. So these two regions don't confuse. This is the first part, like epibasis. The first one is what? Proximal metabasis. Another one is called distal metabasis. Okay. So this is the region. These are the regions. So what is a spongy bone and a compact bone? Epibasis bone. Epibasis are the ends. This part is called a spongy bone. Spongy bone. The interior of the epibasis is called as spongy bone. Below the spongy bone is called a compact bone. Compact bone. This is the collar of the bone. Collar of the bone. Collar means what? Neck of the bone. So that is a collar of the compact bone which forms thicker and longer, which surround the central medullary cavity. This is called a medullary cavity. Medullary cavity. The medullary cavity otherwise called a marrow cavity. Marrow cavity. Cavity means, marrow means what? A matrix, bone matrix. That is red bone marrow. Marrow means matrix. Or it is a substance present in the middle. So that compact bone, collar of the compact bone forms below the spongy bone, which is surround the central medullary cavity or marrow cavity. What is medullary cavity? A cavity that lies in the compact bone. That compact bone, this is called as medullary cavity. So the medullary cavity otherwise called marrow cavity. The interior of the epibasis, interior of the epibasis is called spongy bone. Spongy means what? Smooth and soft. But this is the thicker. This is spongy bone. It is a soft, which contains red bone marrow. Red bone marrow. So there are two bone marrow, red bone marrow and yellow bone marrow. Red bone marrow, it is an important place where the site of RBC formed. So all the RBC cells are formed, are produced in the red bone marrow. That particular part is called spongy bone. The spongy bone is present interior of the epibasis. Interior of the epibasis. There is a place below the epibasis and above the diabasis. This is called the epiphyseal plates. Epiphyseal plates. Epiphyseal plate otherwise called as growth plates. Growth plates. Tell, epiphysis otherwise called growth plate, where the growth is occur. Where the growth is occur. Okay? That is medullary cavity otherwise called marrow cavity is present. The compact bone, particularly interior of the diabasis, or the interior of the or central medullary cavity or marrow cavity, which contains yellow bone marrow. Here it is spongy structure present interior of the epibasis, which produce, this is called as red bone marrow, which synthesis the RBC cells. Okay, next the entire bone surface. The entire bone surface except joint. The entire bone surface are covered by double layer membrane is called periosteum. Periosteum. What is periosteum? What is periosteum? The entire surface of the bone or outer surface of the bone is covered by two-layered membrane. Is called periosteum. It is a 1 mark and 3 mark question, or it may be 2 mark question. What is periosteum? The bone surface except the joint are covered by double layered membrane is called periosteum. The double layer means what? There are 2 layers present. The outer layer is fibrous layer. The outer layer is fibrous because it is made up of the outer part of the periosteum. Outer part of the periosteum is fibrous layer. Fibrous layer because it is made up of dense irregular connective tissue. Listen again. The outer periosteum, outer layer of periosteum is the fibrous layer which is made up of dense connective tissue. The inner layer of the periosteum is the two layer are called periosteum. This two layer is called periosteum. The inner layer is called osteogenic layer. Osteogenic layer. What is the role of osteogenic layer? It is very important because they produce two cells in the bone. The one is osteoblast. Osteoblast cell. Another one is called osteoclast cell. This is an important one more question. The osteoblast cell, otherwise called bone forming cells. Bone forming cells. The osteoclast cell, otherwise called bone destroying cells. Bone destroying cells. Listen carefully. The inner layer of the periosteum is made up of, outer is fibrous layer, is a dense connective tissue. The inner layer of the periosteum is osteogenic layer because they synthesize osteoblast cells. The osteoblast cell, otherwise called bone forming cells. Blast means what? You can that is bone producing cells because replacing the repairing part of the cells. The osteoblast cells is the important part. It also synthesizes bone matrix elements, substances are synthesized by osteoblast cells. And another one is called osteoblast cell, otherwise called bone destroying cells. So the only one letter is a difference. Don't confuse. That means B. Another one is called C. A, B, C. The B, it may be indicate B. Osteoblast means bone forming cells. Clast means bone destroying cells. And also contains the primitive stem cells and osteogenic layer cells. So these are the very important part. That is periosteum. Okay. The periosteum or the outer surface of the bone layer. It consists of two layers. Fibrous layer, another one is called osteogenic layer. Osteogenic layer produces two kind of cells, bone forming cell, another one is called bone destroying cells. Bone destroying cells. Okay. Next, what is the other part of the bone? Epiphyseal plate and others are there. So, inner part, the interior part, the interior surface of the bone. Interior surface of the bone also covered by a connective tissue membrane is called endosteum. Endosteum. The inner surface of the bone is covered by endosteum. Endo means what? Inner, interior. Okay, so endosteum. Peri means what? Outer. So what is the difference between the periosteum and endosteum? Periosteum, peri means surrounding, outer. What is endosteum? Endo means what? Inner. So inner surface of the bones are covered by connective tissue membrane is called endosteum. The outer entire surface of the bones are covered by periosteum. Tell what is it? Periosteum. So that is the endosteum, it runs trabeculae. Trabeculae is a part that are present in the spongy bones. So that is around the trabeculae of the spongy bones, and it forms a canals that pass through the combat bone. Okay. So this is the important part that is endosteum. So endosteum is present interior of the bone. So it forms, that is From the trabeculae, it is one of the one structure present in the spongy bone, which forms a canal that pass through the compact bone. Okay, the compact bones are exterior surface of compact bone is called epiphysis. The inner to the compact bone is called medullary cavity. That is the central part of the bone is called medullary cavity. So another part, the periosteum is a double layered membrane which consists of is the nerve fibers, lymphatic vessel. Another one is called blood vessel that supply blood to the bone. So that is periosteum. This layer is richly supplied with blood capillaries, lymphatic vessel and nerve fibers which supply blood to the entire bones. So if you take any one bones, the bone surface immediately covered by periosteum that richly supplied with blood vessels. Okay, so these are the important parts of the bone. That is the bone structure. So I repeat, there are three major parts: diaphysis, epiphysis and the membrane. That is, epiphysis is the bone ends. The long axis of the bone is called a diaphysis. Diaphysis otherwise called a shaft. The first end of the epiphysis is called proximal epiphysis. The next end of the epiphysis is called a distal epiphysis. The place or region between the epiphysis and the diaphysis is called metaphysis. At the top end of the bone is called a spongy bone. The spongy bone which contains red bone marrow, it is one of the site for the blood cells produce. That is the RBC cell. It produces RBC cell, red blood cells. Next, between the spongy bone, in the spongy bone, epiphysis and the metaphysis called epiphyseal plate. Epiphyseal plate otherwise called growth plates. What is called the compact bone? The compact bone are thicker and tubular structure. It forms the collar of the bone and the entire length of the bone. Next, the total surface of the bones are covered by periosteum. It consists of outer is fibrous layer, inner is called osteogenic layer. Osteogenic layer produces two types of the cell. One is osteoblast cell, another one is called osteoclast cells. At the center of the bone is called medullary cavity. The medullary cavity otherwise called marrow cavity. Particularly it produces yellow bone marrow, which is synthesis WBC. Next, the interior surface of the bones are covered by endosteum. At the lower end of the bone is called articular cartilage. Articular cartilage. What is articular cartilage? Articular means joint. One bones are connected with the other bone is called articular cartilage. Okay. Next part is types of joints. What are the major types of the joint? The joints are nothing but it is an important part of our body. A place where the two bones are connected or meet is called a joint. What is the role of the joint? Mainly to allow all type of movements. All type of the movements. It may be what is a basic movement. It is a locomotion because it allows the all kind of the movements. So majorly this joint protect our body, bones, protect our bones. It is an important part, walking or it may be any action or activities. Particularly it helps to ambulation. Ambulation means activities. So it is a movement of the hand. One bone, it is no chance or bending or rotation or movement of the bone, but it makes a joint between the upper arm and the forearm is called, it allow the movement. It helps us to movement from one place to, that is one side to other side. So that is mainly it helps to movement. So that is the muscles are attached with the bones are used to carry out all type of the movements. So all the muscles which are attached with the bones are called as skeletal muscles. So muscles are attached with the bones. are used as carry out the movement. So without muscles, so the bone no move from one place to other place or one side to other side. So the bone, this joint acts as the fulcrum of a liver. Fulcrum means what? A place against the liver is called the fulcrum. For example, this is the load. This is the load. This part is called a fulcrum. Fulcrum means what? Bearing the liver. This is the liver. Bearing the liver. Because this side, it helps to bear this total liver against the load. So these actors, what is it? The muscles with the joints and the bone, it acts as the liver system. That is a moving system. Okay. What are the types of the joints? There are 3 types of the joint. The first type of joint is fibrous joint. Fibrous joint. Fibrous joint, otherwise called as cyanoarthrosis. Cyanoarthrosis. Listen to the term. Fibrous joint, otherwise called as cyanoarthrosis. This kind of joint does not allow the movement. Do not allow the movement. This is the main thing. Note it. It does not allow the movement. Because one bones are connected with other bones firmly. It do not allow the movement. So it is formed, it is a flat surfaces. Where it is present, the bones of the skull. Bones of the skull is one of the example of the fibrous joint. It forms sutures. Sutures means what? Stitching. It is connected firmly. For example, our skull, it is zigzag method. The skull bones are connected with one bone to others, or it is otherwise called sutures means what? Stitching. Stitching. This is the one bone. This firmly it is connected with other bones. This kind of joint is called what? Fibrous joint. It do not allow the movement because it do not have a joint. No joint. No cavity between the two bones. No space between the two bones. Hence it is not allow the movement. So this is the very important. This kind of joint otherwise called what is it? Cyanoarthrosis. That is cyanoarthrosis. It do not allow the movement. Bones of the skull is one of the example of the fibrous joint. It forms sutures. Sutures are nothing but stitching of the one bone to another bone. It do not form a cavity or space between the two bones. Hence it is not allow the movement. That is the second type of the joint. Second type of the joint is cartilaginous joint. Cartilaginous joint. Cartilaginous joint, otherwise called ampiarthrosis. Cartilaginous joints, otherwise called ampiarthrosis. Don't confuse fibrous joint, otherwise called what? Cyanoarthrosis. Fibrous joint, cyanoarthrosis. Cartilaginous joint, otherwise called ampiarthrosis. It allows the little movement. Little movement. No major movement. It is slight movement. It slightly allows the movement because space is very little. It does not have more space. So this is the very important. It allows the little movement. Slightly movement. Because it is small space is there between the two bones. Hence it is called cartilaginous. You know cartilage. Cartilage it is always allowing the movement, but it is not more movement. So these are example of the bones of the vertebral column. Bones of the vertebral column. You know vertebral column otherwise called backbone. So the one backbone A small cartilaginous joint is present here. Listen carefully. This is a cartilaginous joint. Cartilaginous joint. So this is the vertebral column. It is a connected one to others, but it knows space, even though it allows the movement, slight movement. So that is the example of atlas and axis. You know what is atlas and axis? The first bone of the vertebral column is atlas. The second bone is called axis. It is important one more question. So that is the bones of the vertebral column are backbone, allowing the movement, but little movement. This kind of joint is called a cartilaginous joint. Cartilaginous joint otherwise called amphiarthrosis. What is the third type? Synovial joint. Synovial joint. Synovial joint otherwise called diarthrosis. Diarthrosis. So synovial joint otherwise called diarthrosis. It allows all type of the movement. All type of the movement. Because it forms cavity. It forms cavity between the bones. Cavity between the bones. It forms space between the bones in the joint. Because synovial fluid is present. Listen carefully. How it is made the synovial joint. Synovial joint. It is a one bone end. It is another bone end. These are covered by what is it? It's a cartilage. Articular cartilage. Articular cartilage. This membrane is synovial membrane. Synovial membrane. Synovial membrane. And a space present is called a synovial cavity. Synovial cavity. Synovial cavity is filled with synovial fluid. Okay. So this is the more space is present. So that easily allow the movement. The bones of the knee, the joint between the upper arm and forearm and the wrist. So this allow the movement. This allow the movement very easily. All kind of the movement is a both side. So this is called as synovial joint. Why it is called a synovial joint? A specialized membrane present around the two end of the bones. Around the two end of the bones. It forming a space between the two bones. Space between the two bones. This space is the synovial cavity. These two end of the bones are covered by what is it? Synovial membrane. This space is filled with the synovial fluid. Synovial fluid. Hence it is called what? Synovial joint. Synovial joint otherwise called what is it? Diarthrosis. Tell what is it? Diarthrosis. So it allows all kind of the movement. This fluid present between the joint, between the two bones is called synovial fluid. The two membranes, this bone end are covered by synovial membrane. This joint is called articular cartilage. Articular cartilage means what? Is particularly present in the joint. Okay. So that is all type of the movement. It may be knee joint, elbow joint, or the example of synovial joint, that is otherwise called diarthrosis. Okay, listen student. There are three type of students, three type of the joint. One is called, that is fibrous joint. Fibrous joint otherwise called what is it? Synoarthrosis. The second type of joint is called cartilaginous joint, otherwise called amphiarthrosis. The third type of joint is called what? Synovial joint. It is otherwise called diarthrosis. Tell what is it? Diarthrosis. Fibrous joint, no movement. Cartilaginous joint or little movement. Synovial joint or it allows more type of the movement. Based on these three types, there are 6 types of the movement are there. The first type of movement joint is called pivot joint. Pivot joint. What is the example of pivot joint? The bones between the atlas and the axis. Atlas and axis. The first bone of vertebral column is atlas. Second bone is called the axis. These are connected with the bones of the skull. The second type of the joint, plane or gliding joint. Gliding joint. Gliding joint means what? It allows the movement. For example, bones of carpals. Bones of the carpals. Carpals are otherwise called the wrist bone. Bones of the wrist. The third type of joint is saddle joint. Saddle joint. What is the example of saddle joint? Carpal and metacarpal. Carpal are the wrist bone. Metacarpal are the palm. Bone of the palm. Okay. The fourth one is ball and socket joint. Ball and socket joint. What is the example? Humerus. The bones in the upper arm is called humerus. It is a long bone in the upper arm. It's called humerus. Humerus connected with the pectoral girdle. Pectoral girdle. Pectoral girdle. Humerus are the bones in the upper arm. These are connected with the pectoral girdle. Pectoral girdle, otherwise it makes shoulder joint. Shoulder joint. So already we know this is the head of the humerus. It is a humerus bone. Head of the humerus are connected with the glenoid cavity of the pectoral girdles. This is called as ball and socket joint. Okay, so the axis, the joint formed between the atlas and axis. The joint formed between the atlas and the axis. This is called as pivot joint. Gliding joint means what? Carpals. The wrist bones. What is the number of wrist bones? Already I told you this is the 8th number of the wrist bones. That is the wrist bones. Carpal and metacarpals. The bones in the wrist and the metacarpals. These are the carpals. The carpals is connected with the metacarpals. Metacarpals are nothing but bones in the palms. Next one is called ball and socket joint. Here it is called ball and socket joint. The fifth one is called hinge joint. Hinge joint. What is the example of hinge joint? That is a knee joint. Knee joint. Where the place of knee joint? The femur or thigh bones are connected with the bones of the leg is called the knee joint. Knee joint, particularly the patella is present between the femur and the tibia and the femur. It makes what? Hinge joint. It allows the movement, one direction movement. The sixth one is ellipsoid or angular. So that is the ellipsoid or angular or condyloid. These are otherwise called as condyloid. This kind of joints is present particularly is present in the radius. Radius and carpal. Radius and carpal. Which bone is called radius? The humerus bone is connected with the two bones of the forearm. One is ulna, another one is called radius. So particularly the both the radius and ulna is connected with the carpal bone, but particularly the radius of the forearm bone is connected with the carpal is called ellipsoid or angular, or it is called condyloid joint. Okay, there are 5 type of the joints. Sorry, 6 type of joints. This is the important in neat view portion. Many question may ask this portion, that is a type of joint and the location. Pivot joint between the atlas and the axis. Plane or gliding joint is present in the carpals. Saddle joint is present between the carpal and the metacarpal. Ball and socket joint is present humerus with the pectoral girdle. Hinge joint, similarly the humerus with the pectoral girdle. The femur or thigh bone is connected with the pelvic girdle. So that is a ball and a socket joint. Ball means what? It is a ball shaped structure. Socket means what? It is cavity or depression. Cavity or depression. Hinge joint. Hinge joint commonly found in the knee joint. Knee joint forms between the femur and the tibia and the fibula. So next one is ellipsoid, angular, or it is called a condyloid joint. This kind of joint is present only between the radius and the carpal. Radius and the carpal. Okay. Next one, that is end of this lesson. Next we come to end of the lesson. That is a disorder of the muscular system and the skeletal system. Okay, so the muscles and the bones which give shape to our body and strength to our body to protect our body. Even though that is the muscular inactivity, it leads to many disorders. So that is particularly disorders related to muscular system. Disorders related to muscular system. This first kind of disease is myasthenia gravis. Myasthenia gravis. The second type of disease, tetany. The third type of disorder is muscular or muscle fatigue. Fatigue means what I heard, muscle fatigue. The fourth one is called that is muscle pull. Fifth one is called atrophy. What is it? Atrophy. The sixth one is muscular dystrophy. Okay, myasthenia gravis, tetany, muscular fatigue, muscle pull, atrophy, muscular dystrophy. That is simple. Can explain this. Myasthenia gravis, it is one of the autoimmune disorder. Autoimmune disorder or autoimmune disease. Myasthenia is one of the autoimmune disease. What is autoimmune disease? Our immune system destroy our own cells or tissue is called autoimmune disorder or diseases. Normally this occur, it affects the action of acetylcholine. Acetylcholine otherwise called what? Transmitter. So acetylcholine, this kind of disease affects the action of the acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is actually present in the neuromuscular junction. What is neuromuscular junction? The muscle connected with the nerve, or nerves connected with the muscle. Nerves are connected with the muscles are called neuromuscular junction. Where the acetylcholine is produced. Acetylcholine which helps to receive the impulse and send to the interior of the muscle fiber. That is, it helps to muscular activity. But in this case, it affects or non-secretion of the acetylcholine on the sarcolemma. What is sarcolemma? This is the sarcolemma. What is sarcolemma? The membrane present around the muscle fiber is called sarcolemma. So each muscle fiber surrounded by membrane is called sarcolemma. Sarcolemma contains acetylcholine receptors. This is called what is it? Acetylcholine receptors. So these are the all nerve fibers is connected with the muscle fiber. This is the nerve is connected with the muscle. This is the muscle fiber. On the surface of sarcolemma, several acetylcholine receptors are present which receive the impulse from the nerves. But the antibody, these acetylcholine receptors, this activity is inhibited by antibodies. This acetylcholine receptor on the sarcolemma is blocked by antibodies. So it is antibodies is important protein is a substance which act on the antigens which prevent the disease causing agent. But in this case, our own antibodies which destroy or affect the acetylcholine action at the neuromuscular junction, it leads to muscular inactivity or weakness of the muscle or paralysis of the skeletal muscle. So these kind of antibodies are produced by thymus gland. Normal antibody which is useful for protect the disease. It is always response to the antigens. In this case, these antibodies produced by thymus gland, these antibodies particularly deposit on the sarcolemma, particularly it inhibit acetylcholine secretion, it affects the acetylcholine action. This condition leads to the muscular inactivity, the muscle become weakness and paralyze. Paralyze means inability of the muscle to work. In this case, non-secretion of the acetylcholine at the neuromuscular junction, it produces weakness. In progressive cases, particularly, it affects the talking, muscles of the talking, swallowing, and breathing muscles. So this will be affected. This kind of disease is called what is it? Myasthenia gravis. This is otherwise called as autoimmune disease. Simply, okay, deafening. What is the condition of the deafening? This is otherwise called muscular spasm. Muscle spasm. What is spasm? A sudden involuntary contraction. It is not relaxation. Suddenly the muscle involves only the contraction. But it is normal cases, the muscle it is a contract and relaxation. But in this case, sudden involuntary contraction. So this is called as muscular spasm. So directly it is a contraction, involuntary contraction, sudden action. It affects the muscle activities, This occurs due to the deficiency of the parathyroid hormone. This is one more question. Deficiency of parathyroid hormone. You know parathyroid gland. Parathyroid gland is situated in the thyroid glands. It produces two types of the hormones, parathormone and calcitonin. Parathormone which is essential to retention of the calcium and bone growth. But in the case, the parathyroid hormone is deficiency of the parathyroid hormone and calcium and low level of the calcium in the body. So immediately that is the muscle become weakness, the muscular inactivity, that is called as deafening. What is called the muscle fatigue? A strong, prolonged, repeated contraction of the muscle become fatigue. Fatigue means what? Tired. It's not working continuously. That is strong. The repeated contraction of the muscle fiber produces muscle fatigue. Muscle become tired. So when we are running very long time, we can tired it is. So this is the same because of repeated continuous movement of the muscle become fatigue. So this occurs due to the depletion of ATP molecules. Note it. Depletion of the ATP molecules. Depletion means what? Decrease the amount of ATP molecule. What is ATP? adenosine triphosphate. ATP it is one of the essential energy source to the muscle functioning. Depletion of the ATP molecules and accumulation of lactic acid. Accumulation of lactic acid. Okay, listen here. One more question. How the muscle fatigue is occur? Depletion means what? Reduce the amount of ATP molecules. It is not fulfilled for further contraction or muscle working. And accumulation means what? Is deposition of the lactic acid. You know what is the role of lactic acid? Lactic acid is one of the production for anaerobic process, anaerobic respiration process. So that is absence of the oxygen, the glucose is converted into lactic acid, or breakdown of the glucose leads to lactic acid. Breakdown of the glucose. When it is occur? When the demand for oxygen to the muscles. So demand to oxygen to the muscles. So the respiration or muscular activity occur without oxygen is called a anaerobic condition. So this occur, the lactic acid accumulation is occur due to the breakdown of glucose, or glucose converted into lactic acid. Glucose converted into lactic acid. Okay, this is called muscle fatigue. What is called muscle pull? Muscle pull actually is called as muscle tear. Traumatic pulling of muscle fiber leads to produce a tear is commonly known as sprain. Sprain. How it is occur? Because when the muscle is working beyond their point of elasticity, repeated movement, that place the muscle become vulnerable, muscle fiber become vulnerable, weakened. So this condition is called what is it? Muscle tear. Muscle tear commonly called as sprain. So that is what is the example of the muscle pull? Back pain. This is one of the common example of the muscle pull. A wrong posture, a wrong position when the sitting of the chair for long time, or long hours in same position. It is a wrong posture. It is one of the problem for the back pain. Back pain, it is one of the example of muscle pull. It is a sprain. It is a commonly occur in the muscle fiber because of weakening of the muscle, repeated movement, and a muscle become stretching beyond their point of elasticity means what? It breaking of the muscle, it damage of the muscle. Tear means what? Damage. Because it extends their capacity, their muscle fiber capacity. What is called the atrophy? Atrophy means what? It affects degeneration or cessation of the muscle activity. The muscle is not working. Particularly it occurs in the old age. So the atrophy condition is normally occur. Inability of the muscle to work in some person. So the atrophy condition commonly found in bedridden person. Bedridden person means what? Patient. It is always sitting, always in the bed, rest. It is a severe sickness. The person affected by severe sickness always in bedridden case. So this is condition in the old age or patient. It is not sitting process. It is always in the bed. So that is chronic sickness person affected. But particularly the bedridden patient are affected by atrophy. Atrophy is commonly cessation. Cessation means stop the movement of the muscle activity. Okay, this is the atrophy. Next one is called the muscular dystrophy. What is called the muscular dystrophy? A group of muscular disorder are commonly known as muscular dystrophy. It is one of the inherited disorder. You know, most of the diseases are inherited disorder. So this unknown reason, this kind of disorder is come from our parents, or one generation to another generation. Because the gene responsible for this kind of disease is called a progressive degeneration of the skeletal muscles. Progressive degeneration of the skeletal muscle. Commonly, it affects the muscular. The progressive degeneration of the muscle leads to muscular dystrophy. So this kind of One of the most common type of muscular dystrophy, the chin muscular dystrophy. The chin muscular, DMD. Tell. The common type of muscular dystrophy is DMD. What is the DMD? The chin muscular dystrophy. Muscular dystrophy. Muscular dystrophy. Dystrophy means what? Degeneration, affect. Chin means what? That word, it is one of the common use for the muscular dystrophy. So these kind of problems related to muscular system, Okay. So that is myasthenia gravis, tetany, muscle fatigue, muscle pull, atrophy, and muscular dystrophy. The next problem related to the bones, that means skeletal system. Skeletal system. I will come a little bit later. One is arthritis. That is common problem. That is arthritis. Inflammation of all kind of bone joints are called arthritis. What are the type of arthritis? Mainly this osteoarthritis. Second one is rheumatic arthritis. Third one is called gouty arthritis. And fourth one is called osteoarthritis. So you know, this is an important word in medical term. What is arthritis? Arthritis means what? Inflammation or damage condition of the joint, particularly at the joint. It may be damage the synovial membrane at the joint or synovial fluid. So what is osteoarthritis? Osteo means what? Bone. This kind of arthritis occur in the aging joints, particularly the knee joint, hip, fingers, joint between the hip region, fingers, and the leg. This kind of joints do not allow that is pain or swelling in the bone joint is called osteoarthritis. Particularly degenerative condition of the aging joint is called osteoarthritis. What is called the second type? Rheumatic arthritis. Rheumatism, it is one kind of the autoimmune disorder. Rheumatism. So particularly it affects the inflammation of the synovial membrane. You know already synovial joint is present major part of our body. It allows the movement. The two ends of the bones are covered by synovial membrane. It forms a cavity. So the inflammation of the synovial membrane, it leads to rheumatic arthritis. So particularly it is autoimmune disorder, all type of the synovial fluid. It is one kind of the autoimmune disorder. That is called rheumatic arthritis. Inflammation of synovial membrane. It produces swelling. What is next one is gout or gouty arthritis. This kind of arthritis is occur due to deposition of the uric acid crystals. Uric acid crystal. Suppose our blood contains more amount of uric acid. Uric acid is one kind of nitrogenous waste which are excreted from our body. It's removed from our body. But what about it is excess amount of the uric acid, more amount of the uric acid, our kidney is unable to excrete them. It is directly deposit the bone joint. That is uric acid is one of the salt. It is easily damage the joint. This kind of arthritis is called gouty arthritis. So that is uric acid crystals. So the uric acid is not removed by the kidneys because excess amount. Okay. Next one is called what? Osteoporosis. How it is occur? Particularly it occur the deficiency of the vitamin D. Note it. And the hormone. hormone, which hormone, parathyroid hormones, or it may be calcium deficiency. Calcium deficiency. Vitamin D in general, what is the role of vitamin D to our body? It helps to growth of the bones. Growth of the bones. Because the food sources richly contains vitamin D, food sources are essential to growth of the body, repair the bone. So normally, the deficiency of the vitamin D leads towards it is more flexible and fragile the bone. They easily break and weakening of the bones. Because what is it? Demineralization of the bones, removal of the minerals from the bones. Bone become fragile. That is vitamin D deficiency. Sometimes it is a parathyroid hormone, deficiency of parathyroid hormone, it also leads to low level of calcium. Because our bones are made up of is more than 90% of calcium. Or it may be calcium deficiency. So the vitamin D deficiency in children leads to what is it? Rickets. It is already studied in lower classes what is rickets and osteomalacia. Rickets and osteomalacia due to deficiency of vitamin D. Rickets, what is the condition of rickets? The bone become weakening, is knee joint. So that is rickets in children. But in the case of vitamin D deficiency in adult leads to osteomalacia. Osteomalacia. Vitamin D deficiency in children leads to rickets. Vitamin D deficiency in adult female is called osteomalacia. Particularly the female with the age group of above 45 to 50 affected by osteomalacia because weakening of the bones. Soft, easy to break. This condition is called osteoporosis. Okay, student. Again, listen. This kind of disorder related to the skeletal system, bone disorder. These all kind of the bone disorder are commonly known as arthritis. Arthritis are nothing but it affects a degenerative condition, particularly at the joint. That is osteoarthritis, rheumatic arthritis, gouty arthritis are commonly called as gout. Next one is called that is osteoporosis. Osteoporosis. So this kind of gouty arthritis otherwise called metabolic arthritis. Other name is called metabolic arthritis because improper purine metabolism that produces more amount of uric acid and osteoporosis. Okay, so this lesson, that chapter 9 is completed. So I think this class very useful to you, and watch this video and read well and read your book and collect some important messages or information regarding this locomotion and movement. Thank you for your cooperation. Thank you.